So, welcome everyone. Good evening. We're still going to have just a couple of minutes to let people log in, but while we do so, I'll just have a couple of remarks as we get started. Good evening. Welcome to our webinar, The 7 Big Problems in Marketing. It's presented by the American Marketing Association Southern Connecticut chapter. My name's Ken Lempit. I'm president of our local chapter, also president of Austin Lawrence Group, and I've been driving the Zoom tech. So far, so good. While we're waiting for everyone to join, just want to take a few minutes to talk about your regional American Marketing Association chapter in Southwestern Connecticut and AMA National. Our chapter officially serves Fairfield County and the environs up to New Haven and north toward Litchfield, but also in an unofficial capacity, people from Westchester County take advantage of our programming and membership. Membership is open to professionals, academics, and students, really anyone with an abiding interest in marketing. The local chapter presents 8 to 10 events per year that are open to the public. And in this board year, we were planning a few members-only events as well. We're actually right at the end of a board year with a really amazing new board coming in. We're actually going to start doing some live events starting this summer, probably late this summer, with a networking social event. And we're going to start charging for those live events again, as they do have a cost of delivery. And as a member, you do get a discounted entry to those events. We will probably also have some online events, and as today, they'll most likely be free. In addition, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that is providing financial assistance to a regionally focused charity, and as well plan resources to help minority-owned businesses gain greater exposure and create internship opportunities for minority students from area colleges and universities. The AMA nationally has halved the cost of membership and waived chapter dues. And this is really, makes membership just so much more accessible and valuable. For those of you who may not have been a member before, or if you're lapsed and as you renew, they have a great new focus on member perks, training, and certifications. And there's really never been a better or more important time to join. I think as we try and differentiate ourselves as marketers, if you're looking to advance in your career, want to level up, the AMA is a great resource to help you on that path. Our local chapter offers events such as tonight's panel discussion, and our website at amasouthernct.org has upcoming and past event information, as well as a soon-to-be-launched job board. If you want to become involved as a member, volunteer, or potentially serve on the board, please see the site. Again, that's amasouthernct.org, or you can email our membership chair for just a few more weeks and incoming president, Richard Connor, at richard.s.connor, C-O-N-N-E-R, @gmail.com. We are recording the event, as I mentioned before. During the event, you can use the chat function on the bottom of the Zoom window to submit questions or comments at any time. And our speaker for this evening and moderator will, if it's appropriate, try and get them right there in the event itself, or certainly at the end, we'll have Q&A starting around 8:20 p.m. Really excited to announce our sponsors, sort of the end of year sponsors, and going into the new year sponsor. We have a new sponsor, the Jack Welch College of Business and Technology. For those of you who attended the networking portion of the event, got to meet some of the profs and a leader in that organization, and we just could not be more proud and grateful for that partnership with Sacred Heart's Jack Welch College of Business and Tech. We also have Media Associates, Ben Coons, our immediate past president, my company, Austin Lawrence, and Alpha Graphics of Stamford, great printing, trade, and retail printing resource. Just a little bit about our newest partner, Sacred Heart University's Jack Welch College of Business and Technology is located in Fairfield, Connecticut, on Sacred Heart's spacious West Campus. For those of you who've been around a while, that's the former GE location. The college houses an array of state-of-the-art business labs and classrooms that are really fully technologically enabled, supporting 9 graduate degree programs, including master's and certificate programs in digital marketing, business analytics, and business administration, your MBA. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Ben Coons, our moderator. He's Executive Vice President of Strategy at Media Associates, and again, past president at AMA. Ben's going to run things from here. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Ken. I'm going to do a little intro, and we're going to have a great conversation. Super excited to introduce our speaker. I'm Ben Coons. I'm Executive Vice President at Media Associates, a media planning and analytics agency. And before I introduce Matt Weingarden, I want to tell you why we're having him speak tonight. I joined the American Marketing Association about 4 years ago, really for networking, to meet people, a lot of local thought leadership. But one thing that surprised me as I explored the American Marketing Association is how much content and resources and tools and knowledge they have at the national level. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But it occurred to me, when I'm in my business, or now if I'm in my home office last year, oftentimes when you're planning a marketing campaign, you hit a wall. You have a need, you have to get to a solution. And what's the first thing you do? You reach out to someone you know. We have 80 people in my agency, so I immediately go to the expert in a certain arena and I say, Tim, Sarah, whoever, do you have an answer? And usually they do. But the American Marketing Association has hundreds of thousands of people who've gone through it, who are leaders in their fields. And they've done an amazing job with research journals, with magazines, with web content, of collating and gathering all that information. So what I want to do now is open it up. I'm going to pass it to Matt Weingarden. Matt is the Vice President of Communities and Journals at the National American Marketing Association. He's in a fantastic bird's eye view, overseeing their communities in content. And we're going to do a little back and forth. We'll keep it fluid. But Matt, super happy to have you aboard. So why don't we lead off and have you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Matt?
Well, thanks so much. I'm so grateful to be here. I actually think it's kind of funny. I presented to a chapter on the West Coast earlier today. I feel like I'm going in the opposite direction. But I'm here based in Chicago. So we have this wonderful Midwest weather where, it snowed within the last month, and yet now it's this beautiful, humid magic. So hopefully my climate controlled home will stick with me and be my aid. But as Ben mentioned, I serve as Vice President for Communities and Journals at the AMA Support Center. Been with the AMA for about 9 years. Anniversary's coming up. But I've actually worked in a number of different roles at the AMA. So I've only been in this current role for about a year. Most of the roles that I've been with have been centered around our academic community, and specifically with our scholarly journals. So now I lead the Communities and Journals team, which is AMA's central advocate for the individual marketer. We sustain membership, we support AMA's community infrastructure, including professional chapters like yours. We publish the leading scholarly journals, and I'll talk quite a bit more about those a little bit later on. We nurture relationships with a diverse set of volunteers around the world. Some folks don't even realize, but the AMA exists on every single continent. Particularly our academic community extends in areas of the world that you might go like, really? And so we work with folks across all borders, advocating on behalf of marketing. I'll go into a little bit more specifics about the communities and the journals later, but just as a quick wrap up about myself, my background is in nonprofit management and higher education marketing. And I've had the chance to work at some really incredible institutions, including the University of Michigan and University of Chicago. One of the things that I've personally always valued is the opportunity to work closely with scholars and with researchers, and to look at ways at translating that research for broader consumption. That's really fueled my passion since I joined the AMA a little under 9 years ago. So I feel very fortunate to get to serve in this role, very fortunate to work with a lot of people who are much smarter than me, and occasionally get to share insights that they collect and share with us.
So I guess a first question I have, and we're going to go back and forth a little bit, but marketing is a huge arena. So talk to us a little bit about the different constituent groups within the AMA. You have academics, et cetera, but what are the main population groups that you work with?
Yeah, so the AMA ultimately has 3 core communities. So if you think of our vision and mission, it's all about being the essential community for marketers, but ultimately we're a community of communities. So when we talk about those 3 core communities, we're talking about professionals, we're talking about academic scholarly researchers, and we're talking about undergraduate students, the emerging marketers. So that professional community is served by roughly 70 professional chapters. We host a series of professional conferences. We do a number of career advancement initiatives. Most of those professionals, though, tend to come from middle market firms. They tend to be closer to marketing departments of 1 than marketing departments of hundreds. I think when we think about the majority of our professional members, oftentimes the word scrappy comes to mind, right? I mean, these are folks that are finding solutions, that are making changes, that are affecting large parts of their business, oftentimes with little marketing support from the rest of their organization. So it's a really unique crew. What I find really fascinating is our academic membership. They're scrappy in their own way. Our academic community tends to be scholarly researchers. They tend to be at well-established institutions, universities, names that you'd recognize. And most of them tend to be tenure track, research-focused individuals, where they are publish or perish in their focus. They're juggling numerous projects all the time. And in addition, they're regularly working with large firms and small firms in terms of applying the research that they're doing. That final group, the undergraduate students, interestingly, they tend to be a blend. What we find most interestingly is that our undergraduate students tend to go into 3 paths after they graduate. But those undergraduate students are at a diverse set of universities, not only the names that you'd recognize, but also some names that you might not recognize. Some of our most active chapters are actually based at community colleges and 2-year institutions, not just the 4-year programs. And so, the students in that space are as diverse as you can imagine when you've got chapters that are located at the Whartons and chapters that are located at 2-year programs. When I say that they go in 3 different directions, most often the undergraduate students either go into the AMA professional track, where they're working at middle market firms, working in these smaller agencies, finding themselves as teams of 1. They have a tendency also to go towards academic research directions. It's sort of fascinating. You would never look on paper and say like, wow, there's gonna be a lot of PhDs in this crew based on the kinds of activities that are happening. And yet that is a very, very steady stream. And the last, which is the most prevalent, and in some ways is the most disconnected from how the AMA has been structured in the past, is that a lot of our undergraduate students tend to go into sales. So the sales track, right? They go into large firms, get sales jobs, and move up the ranks there. So the diversity of needs of that community is really incredible. But I also find the enthusiasm within that community to be absolutely contagious. So Matt,
So Matt, we just got out of some breakout sessions, and one of the takeaways from the session that I was in was people were talking about the need to learn throughout your career and to share knowledge and to make sure that you become the expert in the room, because that leads to the next better title, job, etc. I go back to the research and reports and thought leadership you have. I was doing a little background research prior to you coming on, and here's some topics that are currently on the AMA site. We have how algorithms help customers respond, using spatial distance strategically in luxury retail, why business research is broken, what do consumers mean when products are authentic. You have a plethora of powerful content. Can you kind of categorize that? Like if someone were to use your organization, our organization as a research platform, what are the categories we could dig in on?
Yeah, in some respects, it's a really tough question to answer because I almost feel like the answer is there is no limit to the categories that you might be able to dig into. But I guess to be more helpful than say like just jump into like a ball cage at some kind of a kid's fun house. When I think about the research that comes out of our scholarly journals, I think about focuses on what's next, as in what's going to be really important to the average marketer 5 years from now. I look at what's currently a best practice. And then I also look at what are the research tools that you might not even realize exist. So I think about our journals in that respect. So it's that what's next, 5 years out, things that are going to be really important to the average marketer. What are the best practices? So what are things that people are using today that they can apply right away? And then that element, that last element there. So I guess what I would also share is that a lot of times when we think about scholarly journals, we sort of forget that it's not like a go-to guide for how to get something done immediately, right? I mean, like when you actually digest a scholarly article, there's a whole bunch of dense information there that has to do with marketing theory, that has to do with sort of how the authors structured the research that they're doing. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about our team at the support center is we've started to pare down these articles. Pair them into what we refer to as scholarly insights, or at our Journal of Marketing Research, we call it Impact at JMR. And we pull out some of the key elements of the article that are really most important to the research. And then we identify some key takeaways that folks can actually apply right away. Now, what I also think has been really funny is that since we started doing that, we've seen this increase in, I'm going to call it co-creation, with folks that are at a lot of big, major firms. So the Googles, the Microsofts, and so on, where they started doing like their own version of our scholarly insights. So Neil Hoynes over at Google all of a sudden has been pushing out on LinkedIn a series of these quick reinterpretations. And one of the things that he emailed me when I said, why are you doing this? I mean, we're doing this for you. You don't have to do that. And he said, but Matt, you're making a mistake. You're focusing on the articles that are coming out this year. I'm looking at the articles that came out 5 years ago. And I'm making sure that people can digest those because that's where things are really happening right now. And that's where the folks on the ground really need that help. And so I found that to be really fascinating. So follow Neil Hoynes in addition to the AMA, and you'll definitely get some great tidbits. I'll also warn you, he does occasionally interpret non-AMA journals, but I welcome the opportunity to learn from those other journals as well.
So how about an example? Think about the trends. What are some of the cooler Outlook pieces you've seen percolate out?
Here's one where it is pure thought leadership that I'll share. And it actually is based on 2 special issues in our journals. I guess I should preface this by saying that, oftentimes marketers and marketing in general is sort of viewed as the enemy, right? We're kind of derided as encouraging people to buy unnecessary low quality products. We revel in waste, right? I mean, you know, we're family here, right? We've heard this stuff. And the truth is, and hold on, let me stand on my soapbox for a minute, that marketing is often a key part of solving major problems. So marketers are typically the best equipped to gather and interpret people's perceptions and needs. We've been doing this since the 19-teens, when marketing was just this nascent concept. You know, one of our editors at the Journal of Marketing Research, I absolutely love when he says this. He actually does research on healthcare delivery. And he says it in this very monotone way, so my delivery is not going to be as effective as his, but he often says things like, you know, doctors can create cures, but marketers create the welcoming spaces that ensure people know about and take advantage of those cures. And then he stops for a while and he says, unused treatments treat nothing. It's my favorite part of it. Right, so this is the value of marketing. All right, let me get back on track. So the Journal of Marketing just published a special issue. It's a double issue, 14 articles, typically an issue has 7, and it's filled with articles that explore sustainability, climate concerns, economic and social empowerment, health and well-being concerns, pro-social giving, right? So these are topics that I think people forget are marketing problems, and marketing offers solutions. You know, I think one of the most powerful studies that came out of this collection was one of the teams studied volunteer marketers who went to Uganda to help small-scale entrepreneurs, right? They were focused on growing sales, profits, assets, employees. And what they realized is that marketing, unlike support from, let's say, accounting or finance, resulted in true growth. Those micro entrepreneurs hired more people to work on their teams. Those entrepreneurs tended to innovate with their products and pick up on what their customers were looking for. Now, I don't mean to, you know, sort of cut down on the accounting and finance folks, because those are very important elements of business. But what they did find is that the entrepreneurs that got volunteer support from accountants and finance people tended to cut their budgets in order to achieve their profits, right? So that's good, right? It's healthy for business, but the marketers were helping the community more broadly. They were helping the customers more broadly. And they ended up doing research on other areas of the world, right? They went outside of not just Uganda, but other parts of Africa, Asia, the United States and Western Europe, and they found the same patterns happened. So marketing translates to growth. It translates to prosperity. I mean, when we think about the AMA's mission, we're all about spurring economies. We're about careers with meaning. It's because marketing can do that. So that's one piece that I'll share. The other piece that I'm going to share is a special issue that came out of our Journal of Public Policy and Marketing. And this is a journal that I just absolutely love for many, many reasons. But they brought together diverse teams of faculty to look at really challenging topics. So, and understand, these conversations started about 4 years ago. The topics that they focused on were inclusive multicultural marketing, and how are marketers doing, taking a proactive role in encouraging multicultural focus. They looked at youth social entrepreneurship. It's my favorite way they describe it, youth social entrepreneurship, but in layman's terms, it's the Black Lives Matters movement. It's the climate change movement. It's young people who are solving or taking on big problems and looking for big solutions. And they realize that these young people are using marketing techniques to accomplish their goals. They looked at immigration. They looked at political polarization. They even looked at how marketing can be used to better handle national disasters, right? So when communities are hit with national disasters, nobody in this room knows anything about national disasters, right? After the last year we had. And they looked at how do we best allocate resources. And what they realized is marketers are one that have the best answers to that. In some respects, the government should start bringing in marketers to start solving problems of how to distribute vaccines, because
Well,
the marketers are the ones that know that.
I'd like to remind our audience, we are recording this. So if you go to minute 26 of this speech, you can get the clip and send it to your boss if you work in marketing, because this is a great little pitch here. But let's drill in. There's a really interesting piece, Matt, that came out that I think talks about how marketers solve problems. You just published a thought piece, the 7 big problems in marketing. And I love the outline. I thought it was really interesting take on how we have to get things done in new ways. Can you dig in on that a little bit?
Yeah. So the I have a special connection to the 7 big problems of marketing because it's a concept that came out of a really fun conversation that happened at a bar during one of our conferences, right? So there was a couple professors who were sort of pontificating on the value of marketing. And I don't know if you picked up, but I definitely like people that pontificate on the value of marketing. And next to us was somebody not involved with our conference who just started joining in the conversation as these things happen. And he started asking questions. He said, well, listen, like, what about these big problems? How are you solving these big problems? And how are you making these easy for folks to understand? And from that, I guess, friction point, this group of faculty started formulating, what are these really big challenges that companies face, whether they're big, whether they're small. And what I think is really cool is they ended up hitting on this number 7. And there's a ribbon that I refer to as the secret 8th problem, and I'll talk about that at the very end. But I mean, that first problem is about effectively targeting sources of growth. It's about where should marketers be focused? What are the best ways to reach the right audiences? Like, how do we actually sell product and not in that unhealthy way that we're get caught on? Beyond that, we look at the role of marketing in the C-suite. The 50% of the CMO's job is no longer marketing. Most CMOs aren't even called CMOs anymore, right? So how does marketing maintain influence at the top? It's about digitization. Over the last year, we've learned that social media, that web interfaces are really critical. But I think sometimes we also forget that the way that we do business has changed dramatically. I mean, how many of us are relying on tools like Asana and Monday.com, right, to get things done? It's unimaginable 10 years ago that we would be this reliant on those kinds of tools. The insights piece question, I absolutely love. Liam Fahey, who wrote a phenomenal book on our 4th problem of insights, he often says that an insight is knowing something that other people don't know and then using it to your advantage. And I love that way of framing an insight because it's not simply about being able to interpret data, it's about using that data in actionable ways. And that's the trick. Our 5th problem focuses on the omnichannel. Again, I feel like how do we navigate an ecosystem where we have no control over over how people are accessing information about us? I mean, I think as we look at movements that I referenced earlier, right? I mean, the Me Too movement is this incredible omni-channel example where suddenly things that happened online had really significant change in the offline universe. I mean, corporations changed dramatically as a result of this omni-channel combination. And we're seeing that not just in these movements, we're also seeing that in how people purchase things and how they're making decisions about their spend at the macro and micro levels. The dynamism of the global marketplace has never been more pronounced. There's a great look that one of our editors did jokingly of editorials in the past in which editors from about the mid-'80s to present, every 5 years ago said, this is the year of global. This is the year of international. And one of the things that she laughed at is she said, we can no longer say this is the year of global because global just is. It's sort of like trying to separate digital marketing from traditional marketing, right? There is no difference between these things anymore. They just are. And the last problem, I think, was the most fascinating over the last year, because it's the balancing of radical and incremental innovation. And I'm not sure how many of you have said this, but I'm guessing a few of you have, that your businesses had to accelerate innovations that you were thinking about, preparing for, or that you were working on, right? I know at the AMA, we 100% did this over the last year. We had to accelerate so many different things. And so we had to find this balance between radical and incremental innovation. This is actually the problem, I think, that a lot of companies are going to be dealing with for the next 5 years at least, because all of a sudden people are now used to, well, wait a second, during the pandemic, you were able to move from, lukewarm speed to like warp speed in a matter of moments. How are you not doing that anymore? And so I think that that's some of the really interesting problems that we're going to be navigating.
Matt, this is great theory. It's very logical. I think the layer under that is sort of the tool layer. In the breakout session prior to this main session, a young person, when we asked what her mission was, she wanted to start her own business. She came from a creative background, and she's like, how do I build a marketing plan and manage these digital tools? Talk a little bit about that. Do you have frameworks and tool systems that people can use to expedite, doing a marketing plan, et cetera?
Absolutely. I'm in addition to loving marketing and being very passionate about it, I also married a marketer. So I just have to listen through the wall to be able to hear that sometimes the top problems that marketers have aren't necessarily balancing incremental and radical growth or transformation, right? Sometimes there's more practical things. And I think what's, not to sell the AMA a little bit here, but hey, again, we're family. One of the great things about membership with the AMA is our new membership perk that we send out every week, and which includes free online training. It also provides a glimpse into the hundreds of tools and templates that we have available on ama.org for members. What we ended up doing roughly 3 months ago was looking at the tools that we had available and looking at the tools that seemed to be the most important to members, the ones that were being used most often. I will tell you that what we saw clearly was that communication calendars, things that organized, those kinds of templates jumped up high priority. Buyer persona templates, things along those lines jumped up huge in priority. But by far, #1 downloaded tool, without a doubt, SEO keyword database, right? So how do you navigate SEO database? And so over the last number of months, we went from having numerous tools that focused on marketing communications, content marketing, and marketing research, things that included those calendar templates, persona templates, and similar elements. In addition, we've added what we refer to as a marketing strategy suite. We added a specific search engine optimization suite, and finally, a customer engagement suite. So all tools and templates that focus on these different areas, and that the average marketer can pop in there, download, and apply right away, along with videos explaining how to use them.
Matt, I think it's time I gave you a confession. About a month ago, I had a colleague ask me, she had to do a technology review with outside vendors, and she needed an RFP template. So I went to the AMA site, I downloaded an Excel template, I modified it in about 10 minutes, I fired it over to her, and she's like, this is really amazing. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome, yeah. So thank you for that. But I think it's an important point that we're all really busy and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are tools out there that can give you a jump start in calendars, frameworks, RFPs, SEO, et cetera. So let's get pragmatic. Talk through the various publications. You've got a whole bunch of different ones, but if someone joins the AMA, what are the main pubs that they'll get access to?
Yeah. So going back to anyone who is new to the marketing space, #1 thing that I think folks need to do to stay up to speed on what's happening in the marketing industry is sign up for My AMA Daily. So My AMA Daily, AI driven. It's going to start to become more and more tailored to your specific interests as you click the links. But it aggregates all sorts of important news that's happening in the marketing space, including all of our original content, but also pulls in from other leading experts. I think what's really important is that we're of the mindset that just because the AMA didn't produce it doesn't mean that it's not valuable and important. So My AMA Daily, #1. Beyond that, we have our 4 core journals: Journal of Marketing, Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of International Marketing, and Journal of Public Policy and Marketing. I will tell you that the Journal of Marketing, in particular, over the last 3 years, has done a really amazing job of starting to focus on a lot of practical day-to-day problems. I actually get calls, not joking, on a weekly basis from top marketing executives who are asking about our training program based on reading articles from our journals. It's actually kind of a challenge because of the fact that we don't have that much training program that's based on those journal articles just yet. Keeping up with that demand is easier said than done. But I really feel like if you want to move up in your career, if you're interested in advancing, that's the journal that executives are reading. The Journal of International Marketing has also gone through a bit of a renaissance. What I find really exciting about that particular journal is that as we look at the readership outside the United States has increased almost 200% over the last year and a half. So your international competitors are going to that journal to understand how to compete in the United States is what it comes down to. All of these journals are peer-reviewed journals. It's top scholars, top researchers who are getting published. What is also very, very exciting over the last 5 years within all these journals is we've seen the diversity of authorship increase dramatically. More authors from what we might refer to as elite institutions are publishing in there. We have a significantly higher number of women, a significantly higher number of underrepresented communities are also publishing in these journals. And as a result of that, the topics that are being discussed in those journals are also becoming that much more diverse. And in some cases, that much more controversial. Which is a good thing. That kind of friction is what makes things, improves things in the long term. Those 4 journals, really, really valuable. And what comes out of those 4 journals, we started with the My AMA Daily. We've also got the My Journal Reader that comes out on a weekly basis. Again, AI driven, it pulls in scholarship, not only from the AMA journals, but from some additional ones, and provides paths for folks to be able to gain access to really fantastic insights on a weekly basis.
So Matt, you mentioned training and you downplayed your training a bit, but I do know the AMA has a lot of training programs. Tell me a little bit about that too. If I want to develop a team, if I see people that have interests, how can they plug in and evolve through that?
Yeah. We're in the changeover for our training calendar. So unfortunately, if you go to our website right now, it's not all displayed, although in about 2 weeks, it's going to be filled with our fall calendar. But our training has undergone some significant evolutions as well as a result of the last year and a half. Our training predominantly now is shared via virtual platforms. And what used to be these 2-day or sometimes 3-day intensive in-person events have actually shifted towards 1, maybe 3-hour session or 2 2-hour sessions that are workshop style, high engagement, lots of audience interaction, lots of tools that are actually applied in the session as opposed to just being talked about. And what we see is a lot of mid to senior level marketers who have to perform specific marketing functions and want to stay up to speed with new trends and next trends, right? So it's not good enough now to know the best practices. We really need to know about the next practices as well. And so the goal for all of these programs is to provide actionable, practical, and skills-based training. What we've also moved is that most of these are similar to our toolkits, where they're focused on really practical concerns. So you're seeing things like, how do we optimize our copy? How do we create the creative stories that people will actually listen to when there are so many voices in the room, right? And we're not just using 2 screens now. I mean, it's like the average person is using 2 screens as their default. They're using 3, 4 screens as the trend. So it's helping to navigate those spaces. These are also doing a better job of feeding into our certification programs. You know, we have our marketing management, we have our content marketing and our sales marketing certifications. In partnership with the Digital Marketing Institute, we have our digital marketing, as well as our more senior level advanced digital marketing certification. So these are ways that we're sort of showcasing and certifying credible thought leadership and credible actions.
You know, one thing to connect all these threads I want to talk about is, you talked about the importance of marketing, but sometimes it's not valued. You talked about knowledge. A lot of what we do is communicating. A lot of what we do is persuasion. What tools or research do you have to help people in your 7 big problems? You have defining the role of marketing in the C-suite. You know, how do we as marketers get more cred? You know, how do we speak better? How do we communicate better? Any help there?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, right, that like a lot of CMOs aren't even referred to as CMOs anymore. You know, it's like, sort of like marketing is being covered up and hidden in other places. You know, I am somebody who definitely advocates that we should say that we are marketers and be proud of that. I know you're all shocked at my saying that, right? After the last 30 minutes or so. But what I find really interesting with a lot of the research is that there's actually value behind this. So a team recently published an article about top management teams and boards. You know, they looked at the S&P 1500 from, I think it was like 2011 to 2018 or so. It was like a 8 or 9 year period. And what they realized is that boards that have members who are experienced marketers, we're talking have a tendency to have, 5 to 6% higher revenue than folks that don't have marketing. 5 to 6% is actually a lot of money, right? I mean, like that's not chump change here. But in addition to that, what they also found was that the boards that tended to have these experienced marketers also tended to be more diverse, particularly in the space of gender, and to a lesser degree in the space of race. And so also not an insignificant thing to want to talk about, right? That marketing is actually a catalyst, not only for revenue and growth, but also for diversity within the companies. So there's some other research that also documents how CEOs that rely on marketing advice have a tendency to stay in their position longer than CEOs that don't have strong marketing advice, right? So there's conversations about how CMOs kind of rotate in and out of positions. Well, it's okay for the CMOs to rotate around, but having access to that marketing advice is actually good for the CEOs. So, anyone that's got a boss who isn't a marketer, make sure you tell them, like, my advice is good for you too.
Well, I'm going to ask 2 questions that are going to be surprise questions, and then I'm going to open it up to everyone here in the chat. So as everyone participates, take a look at the chat and type your question in for Matt in here. My 2 questions, one's internal, one's external. So I'll start with the external. I'm a marketer, and my CEO has called me and he's given me a very aggressive goal. I'm not even sure if I can hit that goal. How do I build a marketing plan to get from where we are to where the top CEO wants us to go? What would you have for research or solutions that might help me build that marketing plan?
All right, so I want to make sure I'm repeating the question so I heard everything correctly. We've got a CEO. That CEO is looking for like just immense growth that I'm shaking in my boots over.
Exactly. Not that that ever happens to a marketer.
No. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think this is where that insights piece is the most important, right? As the marketing team, we should be able to access all of the insights that exist in our space. And so that first point is going to those insights and looking for the things that differentiate us most significantly. And I actually think what's really fascinating is a lot of times when we talk with marketers sort of after the fact in interviews, one of the things that they say about some of our insights workshops of the past or whatnot is that they didn't realize how many tools they had at their fingertips within their databases, within their survey tools and whatnot. And so it's really about accessing those and taking the most advantage of them as you possibly can.
So building a case based on benchmarks elsewhere to show how it's possible or not possible, but using facts to build that plan, basically.
Exactly. It's about formulating that really clearly and being able to go back to your CEO and say, this is where we're at. This is where the desire is. This is where we actually probably can achieve some of these outlandish goals that you're throwing at me.
Not that it ever happens. So my second question, then we'll open it up, is internal. This is one that happens to everyone in their career. You really want to get to the next rung. You're a mid-level marketer and you feel like you're ready to get that promotion, but you're not quite being recognized. What would the AMA help me or someone else do in their career to make that next step?
Yeah. So I think this is a two-part, and I had mentioned the certification pieces. What we have found is that our members who are certified, their ability to jump jobs and get promotions is dramatically stronger than folks that don't. So there is value in that certification and having that sort of national backing, that badge of credibility from the AMA. That even the folks in HR that know nothing about marketing, right? They see the value. So that's one piece. The other thing that I'm going to fall back on again and reference is that marketing executives are paying attention to big problems. So yes, big problems might not be the problem facing us today. They might not be the thing that my CEO is saying, like, I want explosive growth. How are you going to make this happen right away? But understanding those big problems and being able to walk into a room and raise those big issues at the right point in time is amazingly, it's a dynamite moment. And we actually see this with a lot of the senior marketing executives who come back to us and say, I've been reading your journal since, or I've been paying attention to since. And it isn't just the last year, it's the last 10 years plus.
I think that's a great answer. I know that in our agency, we have about 8 people. We promote a lot, but oftentimes the people we do promote are not only the ones that do a great job in their role, but they look a little wider in the organization and they come up with a bigger idea that helps the entire problem we're trying to solve as an organization. So I think that's a great insight. Well, I'd like to open it up. I don't see any chat questions, but if anyone has a specific question, feel free to unmute and jump in. We'd like to open it up for the last couple minutes here.
And I totally like to give a shout out to the comment in chat about the other journals. There are so many great journals that are out there. And one of the great things about the AMA is we definitely serve as an umbrella to the broad academic community. So we might not publish them, but we do love them just as much.
We have one question from my good friend Melanie. She says, is there a podcast or some other audio way to absorb all the resources and content?
Yeah, so we're looking at rebooting a podcast. So we don't have a regular podcast right now. What we do have is an incredible library of recordings of webinars that have happened in the past. One set of the subset is our Journal of Marketing webinar series, where we actually have authors of our journal articles do some in-depth analyses of the work that they did, but from the vantage point of how would this help marketers that are sort of on the streets, right? This is the Main Street folks, this is the Wall Street folks, everybody in between. And so I am always surprised at how many great compliments we get from diverse groups of people about the value of those webinars. And all the recordings are available for members. So easy to access through the Journal of Marketing website.
Hey, Matt, I have kind of a comment. You made a comment regarding a lot of your marketing students went on to sales careers. I wish our salespeople had had a marketing education day in and day out. I'm constantly in this struggle of they just don't have a nuanced sense of who our audience is, who our buying customer will be. And there's always this struggle of whenever sales doesn't agree with marketing says, then sales tries to do the marketing, which is 100% a disaster. I mean, this can't be just my company, right?
No, and the Marketing Academy agrees with you. The Marketing Academy agrees with you so much that most sales programs that have been created in the last 10 years have been created in marketing departments. And actually the majority of them have been created in the last 3 years. So this is a new thing where a lot of universities are investing heavily in sales departments, and they're making sure that they're part of the marketing department because they want to make sure that the folks that are selling have at least basic concept of customer needs as they move forward. So it's definitely a big challenge. What I also think is really interesting is we've been tracking a lot of those students that go into sales, and what we frequently see is 4 or 5 years into their sales career, they have a tendency to pivot and they come back to marketing. And so, unfortunately for you, it's the great salespeople that know about marketing only stick around for a few years and then they go back, come back home. But it's a real problem.
We have another question from Paul. Paul says, does the AMA partner with academic institutions to certify their curriculum for either undergraduate or graduate programs?
Yeah. So this is a really great question, and it's such a great question that we're actually talking about it right now. So the answer is right now, no. But we're in the process of having conversations, and we're probably going to be piloting something with a few of the institutions in the University of California system as early as the spring. So that is definitely on our radar. That said, what we've also found is that a lot of our courses, of course, they're valuable in terms of certification for, sort of continuing education for our certification programs. We found that they stack up really well for other certifications too. We've got a lot of folks that come from management spaces that have sort of management and project management, even certifications. And they love our courses because they learn more broadly about marketing, they learn more broadly about insights, and it also, most of their credentialing institutions accept it as continuing education credits.
Well, I would, before I ask my last question, I just think a brief pitch. Now is a great year to join the AMA. The annual membership is half off. The price is $12.42 a month for a professional membership. And if you're a student, the price is $2.42 a month. So if you want to get a bullet on your LinkedIn and get your career going, if you're a student, this is a complete no-brainer. So that's the pitch. But my last question for you is what haven't we asked that you'd like to add? What do you see as the big trends we should be thinking about from your view?
Yeah, so one thing is I go back to that, actually, before I go back, I'm also gonna say, not only is it $12.42 a month, but if you do the member perks and you access even just 4 of the on-demand learning that are part of those perks, you've paid your membership. So 4 months, you can pay the full year. But come on, we've got to do pitches every now and then, right? But I'm going to go back to that better marketing for better world piece. I actually think that a lot of the problems that we experience in this world can be very effectively solved by marketers and by folks using marketing solutions. And you know, as we think about differentiating ourselves within the business infrastructure, as we think about showing our clients the value that we bring, I think we should lean into that. I think that it's something that we need to talk about and that we need to be proud of, and that we need to say things like, when you hire marketers, you are also going to grow your business. You are going to bring in more voices. You're going to increase awareness of the spectrum of issues that face your customers, and positively impact the business, not only in the dollars and cents space. And I think right now, as we talk about mission-based, and folks will say, you know, oh, we want to be mission-based, and we believe that. That's what marketing is, right? That's the core of what we do, is we go back to what our customers want, what's important to our customers, and we make sure that we're solving their problems, because that's how we're going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to achieve our goals. I can't emphasize that enough.
Well, very good. Well, Matt, thank you so much. This has been a great insight. It's almost so much content, it's hard to navigate, but I do know that when people start the process of joining, you can kind of pick and choose the things you're interested in. And just as a final question, I guess, the AI you talked is really interesting. So if I read these newsletters and click on articles, you're actually tailoring future content? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it really is fascinating. I actually have 3 email addresses where I receive my AMA Daily on a daily basis. And one of the tasks that I do before I fall asleep at night is I make sure that I go into each of them. One is my real Matt Weingarden opinions, and I click on the articles that I find interesting. One is I am only focused on academic research, Matt Weingarden, and I click on the things that pop up. And the other is I refer to as my smorgasbord, where I just click randomly and see what comes up. And it is amazing how these 3 email, what I get has been transformed and has evolved so dramatically. So it really looks at the kinds of things that you're interested in. You know, hey, if you don't like sales, sales ain't going to show up.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Matt. That's been fantastic. So, Ken, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really great session. Want to say thanks to everyone who attended both sides of our evening tonight. I can see that a lot of you did. It was a great evening. Matt, wonderful job. I'm more sold than ever on the American Marketing Association. Those of you who are not members of our chapter or the AMA nationally, please do take a look at ama.org. There are wonderful resources. I mean, you think you heard a lot, but you really just scratched the surface here in tonight's presentation. So Ben, thank you for arranging our evening. You've been a really amazing resource in programming this year, and I know into next year you're continuing your commitment. And I would also encourage people to consider volunteering for our board, volunteering for committee work, and we look forward to seeing you in real life, probably late July or early August for our first in real life session. So thanks everyone, have a great evening.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
One more time, thank you so much to Sacred Heart University's Jack Welch College of Business and Technology. You guys are awesome. You are rock stars. You're really leading Connecticut into the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.